tell us where we are right now.
Right. Well, you're the first person that has a camera in here. This is literally a satellite factory, an early version of it. And this is the two buildings that are here in Redmond. One is focused mostly on R&D to create Kuiper-based satellites and base stations and customer terminals, the satellite dishes you'll put in your house. And then the room we're in here is going to be the manufacturing line, at least the first of the manufacturing lines for the actual Kuiper satellites themselves. So it's kind of an interesting time to be here.
So tell us about the vision of Kuiper, but really tell us about the origin story, because this was something that you've been thinking about for a very long time.
Yeah. And you know, we hadn't written down the leadership principle at that point. We added this about a year ago, but one of our new leadership principles says, with scale and success comes broad responsibility. But if you went back in time a little bit, at Amazon often we're looking at constraints in our business. It's like, well, how are you going to grow? How are you going to get to more customers over time? And sometimes that's, how we have enough labor. And one of the things that came out of those exercises was connectivity. That almost everything Amazon does for customers is based around connectivity. The start of your shopping journey, AWS with web services, Prime Video, Amazon Music, anything we do mostly requires connectivity. And if you saw the line of where connectivity was going, non-mobile connectivity, basically in the home connectivity, it turns out that it was stalling around the world. Many people, we grew up with connectivity over modems and things like that. That all ran over copper that was subsidized here in the US in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and nobody's upgrading that in rural America. And nobody's upgrading that in sub-Saharan Africa. And so what's happening is people are leapfrogging to mobile, but it's leaving this gap in the home. So, and often people immediately think it's only sub-Saharan Africa. It's not. Just 80 miles away from here in eastern Washington, everybody has copper. They're on DSL. And a lot of people got second homes during the pandemic, and in their second home, they found that they have a connectivity issue. And the Kuiper, if successful, is about bridging that. And obviously, we think that's good for customers. We think it'll really help the underserved and unserved, but it's also good for Amazon too, because it'll add connectivity to more people, and hopefully they can enjoy some of our services. So,
when did you start thinking about that? What was the moment where you?
I'd say the idea was first written down about 4 years ago. When we at Amazon, we don't use PowerPoint. We write documents and
six pages, right?
In this case, it was 2 pages.
Two pages.
The first one, and then we hired a small team. Some of who you met earlier today, and they turned it into 6 pages and fleshed it out to a business model. Once we saw a business model that we thought made sense for both customers and us, then we started hiring a team.
Was it initial? I mean, when you first brought this to the S team, to Jeff, did he say, "This is great," or did he say, "This is crazy"? Well,
he said it was crazy. It was Jeff and Jeff Wilkie in the first meeting. I remember it well. And but they both loved it from the very beginning. Now it needed some refinement. It needed a lot of numbers behind it. It was a little hand wavy in its first iteration, but Jeff loves space. I love space. So it kind of has that sort of North Star moment when you read something, because it's ambitious. It's also something that 5 people in a garage can't do. So if we are going to do good things for society, this is something that, because Amazon does have scale, we do have a balance sheet, that this is the kind of initiative, even though it's risky, it could fail, it's the kind of initiative that we can and should take on.
Where did the name come from?
We were brainstorming, and you look for space names. It's a code name, by the way. I don't think this will be the brand name of the project, and it's the outermost asteroid belt in the solar system. That is what Kuiper is. And when you think about building a constellation of things, you look for things that are orbiting and dense, and therefore Kuiper was one of the things. It kind of has some alliteration, which we like too.
How much do you think about this as a business that is focused on the US, or at least markets where Amazon has historically been in, versus completely different markets that Amazon has not been able to access historically?
Yeah, I think it's out. The nice thing about a constellation like this, in this case it's 3,236 satellites, is it covers most of the population on Earth, around the globe. And so I think certainly it will help in places where we already are, where Amazon is, but people are underserved or unserved. But I also think through probably partnerships, there will be places on the Earth where we're not, that we can help. And you know, other than charging time, when we actually have to charge batteries on these satellites, otherwise we can provide this connectivity almost 24/7 around the globe.
Do you think of this? I mean, this is a moonshot of sorts, but is this a moonshot that, if successful, in the context of Amazon as a business, it looks like a business that's as big or bigger than AWS, for example? Is it?
Can I have you ask that again?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's that loud noise right on your question.
Oh,
Yeah,
I apologize.
I don't know what's popping over there. Some
Yeah.
pneumatics.
It's okay. When you think about this project in the overall context of Amazon's business, if it succeeds, this moonshot of sorts, is this bigger than AWS or something like that?
Boy, comping to something like AWS, which is, you know, they're once in a lifetime opportunities in our retail business. I don't know, but what I would say is the first place I would look is how many customers are out there. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of customers that fit into that category of not having great broadband in their home. So we only need a fraction of that to be a material business for Amazon, and that matters. That's a big business in itself. I don't know if I would aspirationally say today, from what we know, that we could be bigger than what cloud computing and enterprise could be, but I think this can be a meaningful business.
This may be a physics question, but is there ever a day where satellite and wireless can compete in terms of broadband and latency and the actual speed of a wire?
I think fiber and, you know, coax with the appropriate version of DOCSIS and things will always be the best you can do. You know, the speed of light, which you can get over fiber, and if you can get fiber directly into your house, that's hard to beat. You know, so but the economics of laying that fiber, or even subdividing coax from a cable company in a lot of parts of even the United States, let alone some of those other countries I already mentioned, is just, it just doesn't pencil out. That CapEx it boggles the mind. So once you reach that conclusion, then you say, well, what's the next best thing? And we looked at a lot, by the way. We looked at partnering with people that were doing drones, and people that were doing, you know, thinking about balloons, and people are thinking about geosatellites and all sorts of things. And when you do the cost analysis of that, you look at the CapEx required, and this will take a large amount of CapEx. LEO constellation, given today's technologies, is the one that offers the highest amount of bandwidth with the lowest amount of latency.
Right. Biggest challenge to making this reality?
Well, Amazon's never put anything into space, so like that's the first challenge, which is we have to get a couple prototype satellites up and, you know, and test them and see if everything simulates really well, and it's coming together really well. We've built a great team. But until you're putting something in space, it's just not a friendly environment. We won't know for sure. So that's the next big thing. We'll hopefully fly something end of this year, early next, and we'll learn a lot there. I think the other risk behind that is really, can we get the constellation up? It's a big constellation. We just announced a large number of launch vehicles that we secured. And can we get all the satellites up in a meaningfully short period of time such that we can start delivering the service for customers? So it's kind of a two-putt. First, let's make sure the technology works in space, and then secondarily, let's make sure we can fly these things en masse. Before that, though, we had another big challenge which we had to solve, which was about a year ago, which was, can we make the cost of the dish that's in your home low cost? And that was the first big breakthrough, but we're past that now. We can now know we can do it for well under $500, and that's been the Achilles heel of other satellite constellations in the past. It just was hard to scale because the cost of the equipment to the consumer was just too pricey.
You've talked about wanting to make this an economical and a very reasonable thing for people to be able to pay for, especially in countries where the price point would, I imagine, have to be even lower. What do you think that price point even looks like? And as a comp, and I don't know if this is a fair comp, you have Elon Musk with Starlink. at right now, I think about $110 a month. That would be probably considered a high price in certain countries and maybe even in the United States.
Yeah. I don't know what goes into the calculus of pricing Starlink, but for us, we won't price it anytime soon, like, because the service is still a ways away, and we'll probably price it as close to the last responsible moment as possible. But what I can say is that we're dedicated to making it affordable. You know, and because I think, again, that's part of the responsibility here, and I think it's in the DNA of Amazon for sure. That we strive for low prices, and so we're architecting every part of the system. The only way that you can control the pricing of it to make sure it's going to be low for customers is control your inputs, and the inputs here are: how much does your launch cost? How much does each satellite cost? How much does each satellite dish that's actually in the customer's home cost?
Right.
And this team is maniacally focusing on those inputs. And so far, we're on a trajectory which is very close to the original business plan we wrote down. In fact, we're actually a little bit ahead. And so if we do that, we can price this affordably.
How do you think, by the way, about Elon Musk's Starlink and the fact that it's out there? And is this a winner-take-all business or market? And is there a first-mover advantage?
Yeah, this is not a sporting event. Like, there's not going to be one winner. It's not even the Olympics where there probably is going to be three winners. You know, the unmet need is so large. And just think about all the other countries that have skipped to mobile. And in every one of these countries, there's multiple mobile providers that are doing really well. And customers still have an insatiable demand for more mobile services. So I think LEO constellations look substantially similar to that there will be multiple of them. By the way, from an Amazon perspective, let alone a customer perspective, we want lots of connectivity. So, like, more power to
Right.
Starlink and SpaceX and anybody else that wants to try to pursue this. But I also think we want to be successful, and I think there's room for plenty of them.
You mentioned latency. We're all on Zooms, I should say on Chime, right? Amazon has its own video product.
We do.
Is that from a technological perspective going to be the biggest hurdle for this future world where we're all trying to connect over video?
I think it's a very good litmus test for latency. Because we are so attuned as human beings for lip syncing. We've all sat in front of our television where the sound was slightly off. That only takes 20, 30 milliseconds, and then our brain is so good at seeing that the lips aren't synced to the sound. And so a Zoom conference or Chime or Teams or whatever it happens to be, they're all very sensitive to that, and because they can't buffer. It has to be effectively real time, like the conversation we're doing now. Whereas things like streaming Prime Video or Netflix, we can buffer that, and you can hide a lot of sins when you can buffer the data.
This may be too early in the business model process, but do you think of this as a product that will be offered to Prime customers, for example, that there'll be people who are part of a Prime membership that'll live in this network in a different way? I mean, one of the things that's so fascinating to me about the Prime component is just the connectivity in certain ways, or prevents churn, creates customer loyalty. Is this part of that, or we should think about this very differently?
We haven't gone to the level of detail that I think you're implying with the question. But I can answer it in a more macro sense, which is, if we could figure out something that was a good benefit of Kuiper that intersected with Prime, I think that would be great. Whenever we've done that with other products, Fire TV and Prime Video, as an example, in my other part of my day job, the customers love that. And so if we can come up with something, I think we would try to do it. I'd also point out that the major benefit of Prime, one of the major benefits of Prime, which is 2-day shipping, increasingly 1-day shipping, it has changed the lives of people in rural areas. Right. Places, as I said, where my grandparents grew up, they had to go to the county seat to go to a store to pick up things. And now being able to ship things even into rural America and around the world in rural areas, it has really helped people. And I think this has a similar kind of thing for those Prime customers, that we can bring connectivity to them.
And how connected do you think this can ultimately be to other parts of the Amazon world? I mean, what's so interesting is so many of these people here who are working here have worked in other parts, whether they're network specialists, who clearly you guys have been working as network specialists for a long time, cloud computing, doing the consumer space, obviously, with all the different businesses. I'm thinking Zoox, your other, eventually Zoox, I assume, is going to want to have connectivity on some road somewhere where there might not be connectivity.
Yeah, I think there's lots of places that, and we sort of assumed that when we went into this project, that the things that Amazon has created offer really good foundational pillars to build this on top of. If we had to do everything from scratch, it would be, it's already an ambitious project, but that would be an eye-squinting, even more ambitious product. As you said, AWS has a network backbone. It's close to the internet. Lots of people are hosting on it. So if we can interconnect our base stations to that AWS network, we're automatically advantaged in that case for customers to get better bandwidth. We already bill customers all the time, when they order something or you have one of our subscriptions. And so billing is something that we do a lot, and we're riding on the shoulders of all that billing infrastructure. Manufacturing is a big, hard component of this. We have to build, over time, tens of millions of customer terminals, but in the device business, we build tens of millions of things every month. And so it gives us the opportunity to use the expertise of that design and manufacturing and bring it over here. So there are lots of foundational things that we're sitting on top of that makes the task easier. It's still a big, as you said, moonshot, right, but it is easier.
So I always think that you get to oversee some of the coolest products at Amazon. So how does this compare to Zoox, for example, and probably Alexa? Is that the top three for you in your group? I know you probably have to love all of your children, but
yeah, I often say that I have twins, and I can't tell you which one's my favorite. But I would say that in terms of ambition, we're really pushing the edge of computer science, pushing the edge of hardware. I think those three projects are big. I always tell people I have the greatest job in the world. Like, I have the world's biggest Lego set, and Andy and Jeff keep buying me more Lego. So it's great. So I think what we try to do at Amazon is build an environment where builders thrive. And when you look at these projects, whether it be Zoox or Kuiper or Alexa, that is builders thriving, and building on behalf of customers in a way that 10, 15 years ago, you just didn't see this. And it's really a golden age.
What's the coolest thing that's going to happen with Alexa in the next year?
Well, there's lots of stuff coming between now and the end of the year, but I'm not going to tell you specifics.
What's the hardest thing? What's the thing you want Alexa to do?
Yeah.
That Alexa does not do today?
I think two things that Alexa, every time we add to it, it makes Alexa more magical, is when Alexa gets more proactive and when Alexa gets more conversational. We've been talking now for 5 or 10 minutes, and we haven't used each other's name once, but every time I talk to Alexa, I have to say that word, say the name. And that's just not how we're taught from birth to learn how to communicate and talk. So I think you'll see us make significant advancements on conversational speech over the coming 12 months. And then the other thing that's delightful is when Alexa is more proactive. If anybody's had a partner or an assistant that kind of can read your mind,
right,
and you're at an airport and your flight's delayed, and all of a sudden it gets rescheduled on your behalf behind the scenes, and you just get the call, oh, go to gate 24 because I've already booked you on the next flight, and the canceled flight doesn't matter. You're like, oh, that's right, the best thing that ever happened to me. And if Alexa can do more of those things proactively and anticipate your needs without you ever having to ask, that will be even more magical, and you're going to see a lot of progress on that in the next 12 months, too.
Do you think people, it's funny, I want that desperately, but I know other people who get very nervous about these things.
Yeah, I think if it's personalized and it's right a lot,
right,
if Alexa is right a lot and it's very personalized, that will quickly become the new normal. I know, I see it in my own home. When the other day I was cooking, and I was cooking 2 types of bread, and I had 2 timers running, and I did the first bread timer, and then I said set a second timer for 40 minutes or whatever it was, and Alexa came back and said, what would you like to name the timer? I had forgotten to name it, but it was so delightful because I would have gotten confused which timer was which. And so the context, personalization, and being right are really important to being proactive. And so, but once that happens, I think people will accept it.
And then, can we talk Zooks just for a second?
Oh, sure.
How far do you think we really are away from getting in a car without a driver behind the wheel?
I think you can, we can show you that today. The issue is scaling it in a safe way. So I think if you were willing to constrain the safety requirements and say, oh, it could be, humans are very bad drivers, by the way. When you look at the data, we don't want to strive to be a 16-year-old who just learned to drive. That is not the bar. We want to be more safe than that, right, because too many people die in cars. And but if you take I can speak for Zooks, if you take our safety bar and sort of the evolution we have, we're not months away, but we're also not decades away. I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see amazing advancements and start seeing people actually participating. In our case, in robo-taxis, right, I'm sure there'll be other things as well out there, but that's kind of the timeline we're thinking about.
What do you think the bar really has to be, though, in terms of any kind of mistake? Because I always think about sort of what would be politically palatable if something went wrong.
Yeah.
And what do we have, 30,000 plus unfortunate fatalities?
Just in the U.S.
Just in the United States.
Yeah.
And so if I told you that these cars were going to only create 5,000 fatalities a year, you'd think that's great statistically, but I wonder whether people would feel that way.
Yeah, that'll be a good argument for society. I do think, though, the technology bar needs to be better than human beings.
Right.
And so you could argue, is it 2x better, 5x better, an order of magnitude better, but it does need to be significantly better. And I do think, by the way, that the sensors that we're putting into, I can speak for Zooks vehicles, we can hit that bar. I think that is a tractable computer science problem. It's a hard one, it's not solved yet, but I think it is tractable. And then I think it'll be up to how regulations evolve to decide where that safety limit needs to be over time.
Right. You have a very cool job. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having us.
No problem. Welcome
Thanks.
to the factory.
Thanks.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.